Alright, so in this video we'll be looking at significant figures. So what I have here is the significant figure rules. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through each rule and I'm going to write down what should I say, some examples for each of the rules. And in another video I'm going to do some questions pertaining to significant figures, standard form, rounding off numbers to a particular decimal place, and stuff like that. So let's get into the rules. So with the rules, rule number one, we have 5 rules that we're going to go through that has to deal with significant figures. So rule number one, all non-zero numbers are significant figures. Now what do I mean by non-zero number? So as I'm writing down the number, I'm going to write down the significant figure that would represent that number. So what do I mean by non-zero number? Once the number is not a zero, it's considered to be a significant figure. Well, depending on the rule. So for rule number one, all non-zero numbers are significant figures. If we should have, for example, 12. 12 would be 2 significant figures. I'm just going to write 2 sig fig in the bracket beside it. So 12 would be 2 significant figures. So 1 and 2, none of them are zeros. So that would be 2 significant figures. If we had, like, for example, 1351, 1351, these would be 4 significant figures. So I'm just going to write sig fig. And let's say I can squeeze in another example here. Let's say if we had a number, for example, so I'm just going to write down examples based on each particular rule. So we have 2 examples here. So let's try another number. Let's use a different color than the red. So I'm going to use the blue. If we had like 99765, so this would be 99,765. Remember, all non-zero numbers are significant figures. So these 5 numbers would be 5 sig figs, are significant figures. Rule number 2, any zeros, keep on, I don't want E to that. Any zeros in between 2 non-zero numbers are significant figures. Now what do I mean by that? Zeros that are in between non-zeros. So if I should have the number, for example, 305, this 0, we would have to consider that 0 as a significant figure. Why? Because it's what? It's in between 2 non-zero. So 3 and 5, they're not zeros. So that means this 0 here would be considered to be a significant figure because it's between 2 non-zero numbers. So this would be 3 significant figure. 3 sig fig. Let's try another number. Let's say we had 10005. So this is 10,005. So remember, because these zeros, so the is would be referring to this 0 and the r referring to more than 1 zeros between the non-zero numbers. So all 3 zeros would be considered to be significant figures along with the 1 and the 5. So this would be 5 sig fig, are significant figures. So remember, rule number 2, it says all zeros or any zeros in between 2 non-zero numbers are significant figures. So let's go through another one. So let's say, for example, we had 359000009. Now, how many significant figures would this be? So remember, these zeros, they are in between 2 non-zero numbers. So let's see, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this figure right here is considered to be, or is written to 9 sig fig, or significant figures. So remember, for rule number 2, any non-zero numbers or any zeros in between two non-zero numbers are significant figures. Now let's look at rule number 3. With rule number 3 states that any zeros before non-zero numbers are not, if you realize not is in capital letters, are not significant figures. Now what do I mean by that? Zeros before non-zero numbers. Which number could have a zero before a non-zero number? So let's say, for example, we had 0.79. This 0 right here, it would not be a significant figure because it's before non-zeros. We would call this 0 a leading 0. So this number is written to 2 significant figure. So 2 sig fig. So this number is written to 2 significant figure. Remember, this 0, we would not count it as a significant figure. Why? Because any zeros before non-zeros are not significant figures. Let's go through another example. Let's say we had 0.000915. Now, these zeros are the significant figures? No, because they are what? They are before non-zeros. So this number right here, this figure right here is written to 3 significant figures. So the first significant figure would be the 9, the second would be the 1, the third would be the 5. So this is 3 sig fig, or 3 significant figures. So let's do another example. So for example, if we had 0.0501, for example, how many significant figures would this number represent? Now this number would represent 3 significant figures. Why? Now remember, we would not consider these zeros at the beginning of this number to be significant figures. This 0 is a significant figure because of rule number 2. Why? Because the 0 is between 2 non-zero numbers. So this number is 3. It's written to 3 sig fig, or 3 significant figures. Now let's move on to rule number 4. Now rule number 4 states that any zeros after non-zeros, or any zeros after non-zero numbers without a decimal point are not significant figures. Now what does that mean? For example, let's say we had for example 500. This number, it does not contain a decimal point, so that means the zeros here, we would not consider them to be a significant figure. So the first significant figure would be the 5. So this number is only written to 1 sig fig, or 1 significant figure. Remember the rule says that any zeros after non-zero or non-zeros numbers without a decimal point are not significant figures. So let's go through a few more examples with this one. Let's say for example we had 3900, so 3900. Now this number, how many significant figures would this number be? This number would be only 2 significant figures, because these 2 we would not consider them to be significant figures because this number does not have a decimal point. So this number is written to 2 sig fig, or 2 significant figures. Let's try another example. Let's say we had 10,000. How many significant figure would this be? This would be only 1 significant figure. Why? Because the zeros that follow, the number does not have a decimal point, so we would not consider the zeros that follow this 1 to be a significant figure. All right, so let's try one more. Let's say we had 57980. So this is 57,980. How many significant figures would this be? This would be 4 significant figures. remember, we would not consider the 0 that's trailing the non-zeros to be a significant figure. Why? Because these numbers do not have a decimal point in them. Now we have one rule that we're going to one last rule that we're going to go through. So with the last rule that we're going to go through, and I have a little thing here. So before we go through the last rule, we have so these would be leading zeros. This would be in between 0, the 0 that's in between two non-zero number here, and these numbers 9, 9, 8, 9, these are non-zero numbers, and the zeros that follow, which is, it has to relate to the final rule, they are referred to as trailing zeros. I think I referred to it earlier on in the video. So let's look at the final rule that we're going to go through. Now the last rule says any zeros after non-zeros, or any zeros after a non-zero number in a number with a decimal point are significant figures. Now what does that mean? Let's use a different color marker for this. So let's say we have a number, and the number is let's say 350 point. There's the decimal point. This number 350 is written to 3 significant figure, or 3 sig fig. Why? Because this number has a decimal point, so we would have to consider this 0 as a significant figure based on the rule. So let's go again. If I had 0.0590, this number, how many significant figure would this number be written to, or is it written to? Now remember, we would not consider these to be significant figures. These are the significant figures. Why? This number has a decimal point, so we would have to consider this 0 or this trailing 0 to be a significant figure. So this number is written to 3 significant figure. Let's go again. Let's say we had 3, all right, 0.030. So 0.030. Now remember, we would not consider these two zeros to be significant figures. We would consider these two, this 0, why? Because of the rule, and this 3 because it's a non-zero number. So this number is written to 2 significant figures. So remember, with the last rule, any zeros after a non-zero number is a so any zeros after a non-zero number with a number without a decimal point are significant figures, and then their rules suggest that. So let's give you a final example. Let's try and mix this up now. So with the final example that I'm going to give, I'm going to write it down here. Final example. Let's look at this number to see if it how many significant figures it's written to. So let's say we had 0, 5, 9, 3.1050. Now, how many significant figures is this number written to? Now we know that the number at the front, as in the 0 at the front, it would not be a significant figure. So let me put an X across it. We would not consider it to be a significant figure. In the first place, in this case, it doesn't even make any sense to put a 0 in front that number. So this number, how many significant figures? 1, 2. So when we're considering significant figures, if you realize we're starting from the left and we're going across to the right. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now remember, this one, it's an in between 0. So we would have to count this one. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 significant figures. Remember, this one is a trailing 0. So this number is written to 7 sig figs, or 7 significant figures. So that is how we would operate based on the rules. Now the questions that I'm going to work out, I'm going to work them and I'm going to put them based on whatever significant figures they ask for. And I'll be doing some past paper questions pertaining to CXC. So hopefully so let's do just a quick review on the rules before I end this video. So rule number 1, all non-zero numbers are significant figures. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, any zeros in between two non-zero number are significant figures. Rule number 3, any zeros before non-zero numbers are not significant figures. Rule number 4, any zeros, why did I put an E here again? Any zeros after non-zero numbers without a decimal point are not significant figures. That's rule number 4. And rule number 5, we have any zeros after a non-zero number in a number with a decimal point are significant figures. So hopefully this video helped you to understand significant figures a bit more.